Hey artists, we are going to do some dot monoprints today inspired by the book, The Dot by Peter Reynolds. I'm going to give you a quick little rundown of our supplies. I've got my little plate of plexiglass. I've got some colors right here and I'll have extra colors too. We're just going to be starting off with our primaries right here. I've got water cup with paintbrush. I've got some plastic putty knives right here. I've got different sizes of mat board scraps. I've got a handy dandy paper towel, a little Q-tip, spray bottle. And of course I've got some paper. Now before we get started, we're going to go ahead and write our names on one side of each piece of paper. Now you're going to find you have at least one piece of print paper right here. This is when I say print paper, it's like copy paper, it's super thin. I'm going to write my name on that, and I'm also going to write the word ghost, because this is going to be for our ghost prints, and I'll tell you what that is in a few minutes. Write your name, teacher's name on each piece of paper. Now one little trick before we get to adding color, I'm going to get my paintbrush and I'm going to add a little mini puddle of water to my table right underneath my plexiglass. Then I'm going to press my plexiglass plate onto that little puddle. That actually just kind of helps hold the plexiglass in place a little bit. It'll still move a tiny bit, but not quite as much. Now I want to do a little refresher on some of our color mixing. So you're going to start off by choosing two primary colors. Now I'm starting with my yellow. Everybody say less is more. Less is more. Yes, less is more, because if you get way too much paint on there, you're going to end up with a huge mess on your hands. I'm going to start out with just one of my mat board scraps. If you want to start off with something else, like one of your putty knives, you certainly may. Now on here, I'm going to start to draw and kind of turn a circle with my little mat board square. And it might take me a minute to kind of get it going. Oop, there it goes. And you'll find different kind of techniques to do this. If you press down too hard, you're going to end up scraping most of the paint off of the plexiglass. But if you're super light with this, you'll see that the paint kind of stays on. It even has some of these cool stripes in there. I really love how that looks. I think I'm just going to add a tiny little bit of blue to this. Of course, I'm only choosing one other primary color. I'm not choosing all three because I don't want it to get muddy. Again, if this kind of technique isn't working well for you, try really almost laying this mat board square down almost kind of flat and being so light when you turn that. Now it's always helpful and handy to have just a little area where you can throw your paint tools or your dirty tools. So I'm throwing that on that little dirty paper towel right there. And I'm going to grab one of my pieces of paper. I don't want it to be my ghost paper. This is not my ghost paper. While that's still wet, and it's very important that you do this while this is still wet, you don't want to let that paint dry, so you want to be moving pretty quickly today. I'm going to just press and rub, making sure that it's not moving all around. And oh, that's a pretty cool little dot. Now I might decide to pull another print. I could add more if I feel like I didn't get enough paint on there, but I feel pretty happy with the amount of paint on there. Honestly, I wouldn't want any more. Now, if I love that dot also, I could just keep adding paint on top and pulling more prints. But if I want to remove some of that paint, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ghost paper and I'm going to throw that down and just press and rub again and pick that up. And that didn't pick up a ton of paint, but it did remove a little bit more. If there's still way too much paint on there for me to do my next step, I could certainly get my paper towel and wipe it down a little bit. But I'm going to leave that because if my next prints do pick up a little bit of that dot in the background, I think that might look cool. Now I'm just going to kind of set this aside. And by the way, what did my yellow and blue mix to? Green, of course. So just remember your color mixing. If I had chosen red, what would have happened? A little bit of orange. If I would have chosen the blue and the red, what would have happened? A little bit of that purple or violet color. Now, since I've got that yellow going on and I've done my primary into secondary color mixing example, I'm going to get a bright lime green just for fun. Less is more. So, oop. I squirted a little bit more than I wanted to right there. So I'm just going to spread that paint out and use that. I'm going to grab one of these plastic putty knives now. And same thing right here. If I press down too hard, then I'm just going to end up scraping all that paint off. So I might need to get this super low and just kind of spread it out. Now if I want to do that kind of radial turn, I certainly could. Or if I wanted to experiment with different ways of making a nice big dot, I certainly can. Remember, your guidelines today are making dots, but you can certainly make dots any number of ways. You might even have some fun kind of drawing some lines through your dots. Ooh, one thing I love, you can get a Q-tip and you can, while that paint is still wet, you can basically almost erase some of that paint. If your paint is dry, that certainly won't work. Now, I want to go ahead and throw a piece of paper down while that's still nice and wet. That's pretty cool. What if I wanted to add one little dot of yellow right in the middle? I certainly could do that. Now I'm just eyeballing this and gonna try to match it up as best as I can, but I'm gonna throw this print right back down on top. That didn't really work the way I wanted it to, but I still think that looks kind of cool. I want to pick a little bit more of that paint up, so I'm gonna throw that ghost print down again. Now, nobody said that you had to make just one dot. So I'm gonna very carefully dot around just single little dots. I'm using this kind of grayish silver color right here. Remember, less is more. This time I'm gonna get my smaller little scrap of mat board and I'm gonna turn a circle with this. Right now I'm mostly almost just erasing that paint in the center. This is all about experimenting. You're gonna do some things that you find might work really well, and you're gonna do some things that you find don't work so well. That's all part of the experimentation process. I'm not really happy with where that was going, so I almost just kind of made a little circular window right here. I think I might actually switch to my paintbrush. And I don't want too much water on my paintbrush, so to get some of that water off, I'm just gonna slide and glide off of the edge of that cup. And now I'm gonna draw a little circle or a little dot with my paintbrush. Now it's kind of fun. This paintbrush that I'm using is a flat tip paintbrush, so it's really easy to almost kind of turn a circle with it. Now again, you don't want to take too long in this, because if this dries too much, then you're not going to pull much of a print. You need to pull your prints while your paint is still super wet. That's pretty awesome. Now I know you only have limited space, so just kind of gently stack your papers. If you have to stack them on top of each other, kind of beside you a little bit, you certainly may. Just make sure you don't have tons of paint on there and they're not kind of gobbing up. Purple and yellow are complementary colors, which means they look good together, but if you mix them together, they're going to turn a little bit muddy. But I almost kind of love how I've got a little bit of a half dot right there. That's really fun, I think. Now technically I'm out of paper, but I'm going to try to throw this one down and see what it does right here. Because unless your paper is super saturated and has way too much paint on it, you can do more than one print on each paper. That's very vague and light, but I think that looks really, really fun. Okay, once again, I could just throw my ghost paper down and see if I can pick up any extra paint, and I might be able to, and I might not. I picked up a tiny bit. Now, I could do one little spray in that, the spray bottle. I could throw my ghost paper down one more time, now that that has a little bit of spray of water on it, and it will pick up more now. So even your ghost paper can look pretty cool. Now artists, this day is all about the process, and it's about experimenting with some monoprints and different colors and materials and techniques. So if you are thrilled with your results, that makes me so happy. If you're not as thrilled, if your results aren't, the most beautiful thing in the world, don't worry about it. Again, this is more about the process. This paper, once dry, can become beautiful collage paper. You can cut it out to make different things out of it. You can even cut it out to make cards out of it. And also once dry, you can draw on top of it or paint other things on top of it, so you could turn some of your dot designs into other things. Now once you are fully finished, you are gonna give your plexiglass plate one extra little squirt with this water, and you're gonna grab a paper towel and just wipe it down one more time, and that should get most of the paint off of there. Thanks for watching and listening.